Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to Insomnia. I'm your host, Adrian LaDalia, and let's get right into it. I was just doing some light reading down here, an old book of archaeology and artifacts. Did you know that archaeology, which is the study of human activity through the analysis of material culture, actually evolved from the old field of antiquarianism, which was just the collection of and interest in artifacts of the old world without much regard to where they actually came from. This change only came about in the late 19th century, and the influx of better technology accommodated this transition. However, despite most of the advancements in the field, there are still many mysteries left in the world that remain just outside explanation. A good example of these mysteries are what people call out-of-place artifacts, which is a term coined by American naturalist and cryptozoologist Ivan T. Sanderson, and refers to an object or historical, archaeological, or paleontological interest found in an unusual or seemingly impossible context. Notable out-of-place artifacts are the Baghdad Battery, which is a ceramic vase with several metallic rods, which many believe could have functioned as a power source in ancient Persia. And most often brought to the public attention is the Antikythera mechanism, which is a form of mechanical computer constructed by the ancient Greeks. But today we're talking about a different kind of artifact, a series of discoveries that still challenges much of our understanding of the ancient world, and has even helped in creating an entire spiritual movement. We're talking about the crystal skulls. Are the legends fact or fiction? Most people have heard of the crystal skulls in one way or another. Oftentimes they cite recent Hollywood ventures or mainstream media depictions of the skulls. These portrayals, however, don't even scratch the surface of the legendary items. To understand more about the legends, though, we need to take a look at the context of the time period. Prior to the 19th century, interest in the ancient world wasn't thoroughly studied, and in this case, most pre-Columbian Latin America was not adequately understood, and most people were content to leave it at just that. However, once the late 1800s came around, interest in ancient civilizations began to rise, and with it came the field of archaeology, as I mentioned earlier. Expeditions were now being led across the globe, and in particular, they were being led into Central America. This leads us to a man named André-Eugène Bobin Duverge, a French antiquarian who would later become the official archaeologist of Maximilian I of Mexico, who was a foreign emperor of Mexico in 1864. At the time, artifacts were difficult to determine in their authenticity, as most people didn't know what the authentic Mesoamerican artifacts actually looked like. However, Bobin had come across something that had intrigued and amazed many people, not just in Mexico, but throughout the world. In the 1860s, he had come across a series of small crystal skull carvings no more than 2 inches tall, and each one would have bore holes from top to bottom through them, which suggested they may have been used as some form of necklace or bracelet. Either way, there were more of them out there somewhere. This would mark the beginning of the crystal skull phenomenon. Bobin's discoveries had caught the attention of the world, and several artifacts in his collection had been sold throughout the United States and Europe. Most notably was a larger skull, roughly 4 inches high, that sold to the Musée du Quai Branly in Paris, now simply referred to as the Paris skull. The other was a larger specimen, a good 5 or so inches high and measuring 7 inches long, that was sold to the British Museum in London in 1897, now also creatively titled the British Museum Skull. Their origins were truly unknown, and several other specimens began surfacing globally. And while there are many examples of these, for the sake of brevity, we'll be focusing on a select few, namely the most pertinent and well-known to the phenomenon. Many questions have been raised at this point. How were they made? Most of the skulls exhibit a high level of detail. Where did they come from? Who made them? And finally, why? Surely something so meticulously crafted must have served some special purpose. Some of the most well-known crystal skulls are known as the following, and are the ones we will be primarily discussing here. The Paris skull, the British Museum skull, the Smithsonian skull, which was mailed anonymously to the Smithsonian Institute in 1992, which was the largest skull at 15 inches high and weighing about 30 pounds. The Mahasamatman skull, said to be formed of pure light and given to the indigenous tribes of the Amazon. The Mayan and Amethyst skulls, the former being discovered in Honduras, then vanishing mysteriously, and the latter said to have been a personal keepsake of former Mexican President José de la Cruz Porfirio Díaz in 1884, which was supposedly locked away in a vault cult to this day. And finally, we have the Texas skull, also known as Max to its followers. The item is said to be imbued with potent healing energy, which is a staple of most of the legends associated with the skulls. So how could they have been made? Most experts agree that the level of detail and craftsmanship exhibited, namely the gem-cutting techniques and finishing, surpass what most ancient cultures had available to them at the time. This is where many start to believe that the skulls must have had some truly exceptional origin. First, we need to look at the physical and spiritual properties of quartz. Quartz is actually the second most abundant mineral on the planet, right after feldspar, and is oftentimes called rock crystal in its purest form. Some of the varieties of quartz are agate, onyx, amethyst, and citrine, just to name a few. It's also known for its piezoelectric properties. Piezoelectricity is an electric charge that accumulates in certain solid objects in response to applied mechanical stress. And this is why quartz is often used in technology for storing, transferring, and amplifying energy, which many people believe can be applied to spiritual means as well, such as healing and transmuting energy in our minds and bodies and balancing chakras. Point is, it's ranked as a 7 on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness, which usually requires a bit of special tool work to be able to cut and adequately finish. Namely, diamond-tipped saws, lathes, and dremels are used, which ancient civilizations simply did not possess. So if the skulls seemingly could not have been from the hands of man, well, where did they come from? In the 1970s, much of the Western world had witnessed the dawn of the New Age movement, which was a collective interest in all things of a spiritual nature, such as ancient cultures, alternative medicine, and astrology. The crystal skulls had re-entered the public eye, and many had now ventured to delve into their true origins. Most experts and authors of the phenomena had canonically designated a set number to the ancient skulls, 13, which was significant in its importance in numerology, an occult study of numbers and their symbolic meaning. According to this study, 13 is a powerful number representative of upheaval and building new ground and foundations, which many believe is symbolic of the spiritual new age or ascension that the skulls may bring about. 13 is also a part of the Fibonacci sequence, which is a series of numbers in which each number is a sum of the two preceding numbers, a common theme in sacred geometry, which is a study of symbolic meanings in patterns and shapes seen throughout the universe. At this point, with such powerful symbolism and ideas associated with the skulls, the proposed theories of their origins began taking fantastic directions. Some have proposed that the skulls could have been created by the inhabitants of the lost city of Atlantis, the fictional island spoken of in the works of Plato, a Greek philosopher. The city of Atlantis was said to be home to a civilization of advanced culture and technology, until it sank into the Atlantic Ocean in roughly 9600 BCE. The inhabitants of this lost city supposedly used the skulls as a form of power source, and even then used them for dimensional travel. Others have proposed the lost land of Lemuria, a supposedly lost land swallowed up by the Indian Ocean due to a cataclysmic event. This advanced civilization was said to have used the skull's power to teleport the remnants of their race to various parts of the world, predominantly within the tunnels and subterranean areas of Mount Shasta in the state of California. Some have said the skulls may have been delivered to us from an even more extraordinary source, such as an advanced extraterrestrial race to extra-dimensional beings. While the ingenuity of mankind shouldn't be underestimated, as ancient civilizations were able to accomplish many great things, most experts agree that the skulls simply were not created by men. Now, this puzzled most researchers, for if the skulls couldn't just be a natural phenomena or have been carved by people, then they must have come from somewhere else. In this case, theories began looking beyond this world of ours. Indeed, it is a predominant theory in the legend of the crystal skulls that they have been delivered to us by extraterrestrials, advanced alien life forms, and in this case known primarily in UFO mythology as the Pleiadians, and what many refer to as the Anunnaki. The Pleiadians are a tall humanoid race of Nordic Scandinavian appearance, oftentimes called our Space Brothers. They supposedly hail from the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters, which is a hot blue open star cluster in the constellation Taurus. They are said to be a benevolent race, which will ultimately return and bring about a new golden age of mankind. Many believe the skulls could have been crafted by these beings, possibly as a symbol of the natural balance between life and death. This brings us to the flip side of this same coin, the Anunnaki, a winged race hailing from the mythical planet of Nibiru, said to be the very engineers of mankind. They taught us to build, to craft, and to evolve. Many believe they left the skulls behind as a communication beacon or even a conduit for which they could return. Some even say that this race of beings were not exactly benevolent, as they may have engineered mankind as a slave race. We may never know. While many have raised their eyes towards the cosmos, some have posited that the skulls could be from a level much deeper, extra-dimensional origin. origins. In this case, most theories of the skulls could be directly related to an inorganic race of cybernetic beings known as the Archons. Primarily spoken of in Gnostic mysticism, these beings are responsible for constructing and maintaining the holographic universe that we exist in. A Matrix-like scenario, if you will. Okay, so many of you out there might be thinking, sure, a race of super advanced alien life forms created the skulls. We're a lost civilization right here on Earth. That still raises the final question, why? What was the purpose? Well, many experts believe that the skulls may be a sort of conduit for spiritual energy, as we discussed before in regards to the piezoelectric uses in quartz. In fact, many New Age movements believe that these skulls are a physical database of our species' collective consciousness, as in supercomputers of sorts, which store every thought and emotion and even history of the human race. They say that when the 13 ancient skulls are brought together, they will then bring about a new spiritual age, heightening our species to levels we never thought possible. Some even believe that upon convergence, the skulls will then form a grid matrix, allowing us to transcend beyond this dimension and explore the many parallel worlds that surround us. They could also very well open a doorway for our long-lost space brothers to return and guide us from this path of chaos which we've forged for far too long. Perhaps they simply exist to help us channel our psychic abilities and act as guidestones for spiritual endeavors. We may never know. Now that we have a better understanding of the legends, the supposed origins, and history, we can now look at the most well-known skull amongst them all. Discovered in 1924 in the ruins of the Mayan city of Lubantun, Belize. The most infamous discovery made by English adventurer Frederick Albert Mitchell-Hedges. Let us now take a look at the story of the Crystal Skull of Doom.
Journal of F.A. Mitchell-Hedges, adventurer, expert of antiquities, novelist. The year was 1924, and my expeditionary team had discovered what appeared to be a lost section of the city of Lubantun. Exploration of the site had uncovered many unique treasures. However, my dear daughter Anna had noticed something our team had overlooked.
Father, what's that light over there?
A shimmering light beckoned from a yet unopened tomb. Upon clearing the entryway, we had entered the main chamber and encountered something most remarkable. A clear, flawlessly crafted crystal skull. I would estimate that it must have served some religious purpose and had to be at least 3,600 years old. Upon approaching the pedestal, I began to see images within the artifact, as if conjuring some ancient magic. I dared to view it closer, and in the skull, I was shown everything. Object had the power to tell of future events, and of knowledge not meant for this world, that it could lay a curse upon all who came across it. I hid the skull away, for I feared it may have been better left within that tomb.
Whether or not this story is true is up for debate, yet despite whether or not the skull is truly ancient or from an extraordinary place, the fact still remains that it is a remarkable item of unknown origin, an out-of-place artifact, if you will. The skulls have not gone without their fair share of scrutiny, however. As they say in one form or another, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and many of the claims brought about by New Age theorists have actually been refuted by modern science. Indeed, some of the skulls we've mentioned have undergone extensive testing to see whether or not they could stand up to the legendary claims of their beginnings. Most have not. The British Museum skull and Paris skull we discussed earlier were viewed using scanning electron microscopes, a very, very detailed way to gain information about the surface and composition of whatever it is you're viewing. The tests revealed that both of them exhibited lapidary marks, or gem-cutting marks that were consistent with tool-making techniques, dated to the late 19th century and late 18th century respectively. The paraskull has even undergone particle acceleration tests, which only corroborated this information. And tests done on the Smithsonian skull revealed that it was carved using carborundum, a modern abrasive and popular due to its low cost and durability. Even a relatively new technique known as quartz hydration dating has been applied to some of these skulls, and all have revealed that the skulls simply are not what they appear to be. Many questions are raised at this point. Were they all just simply hoaxes, or as they usually call them, modern fakes? Well, not necessarily. Some of the other skulls in which we've discussed, such as the Mayan and amethyst skulls, were supposedly congruent with ancient cutting techniques and styles. However, it is interesting to note that both of the skulls are lost and or locked away, perhaps due to their true nature, or that the powers that be simply did not want them falling into the wrong hands. Many other skulls that are supposedly of ancient origin simply either not have undergone testing, or may simply be still hidden out there in the world somewhere, waiting to be discovered. As to where even these modern fakes came from is a mystery in and of itself, for who actually carved them, and like we've been asking this whole time, why, we may never know. But we here at Insomnia will continue to pursue these mysteries. I'm your host, Adrian LaDalia, and this is Insomnia.